Hello, everybody. Sleepy Panda 27 here. And today we're interviewing Red. Woo! Poggies!
Hello, hello, hello.
Um, Anyone who doesn't know, if for some reason someone who isn't in the Aegis League has stumbled across this video, Red runs the Aegis League. Um, I don't know
That's
why
true.
anyone wouldn't know that, but I am trying to make these videos pseudo accessible to new people.
Yeah. Technically, I don't run the league anymore. I put a lot of that on Hirsch. Um, but yeah, I used to, and I'm head of esports development at Aegis Esports. So any type of expansions into new esports or expanding on our current esports offerings, that's what I do at Aegis.
Oh, okay,
And
cool.
for those who are not aware of the games that we do for Aegis, we do Legends of Runeterra, League of Legends, TFT. And then we do a couple fighting games as well, and those are usually like on a rotation. Right now we're doing Under Night in Birth to it's a long anime title, and then we do Guilty Gear Strive and Grand Blue. So, if you're familiar with any of those titles, you're more than welcome to come and sign up for any of our leagues that we do because we do leagues for each game. So.
Cool. Um, I did write some questions down just so we had structure, but I also want to say if there's anything you want to mention at all, feel free to interject or anything like that. I only had like a day to sort of think of things and I wasn't exactly sure. So if there's anything you
Yeah,
do want to say, please say it.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure. But we'll just start with your questions, and if anything comes to mind, I'll elaborate. But I'm kind of an open book. There's no secrets in LOR anymore, so you just go ahead and ask whatever you need.
uh, okay, well, if there's no secrets, then I'm gonna ask a question I've had for a while that you may not have any more information than I do. So it is possible
Mhm.
that you don't know either. Uh,
Right.
did is it confirmed that Talpinator is just never gonna get his card into LOR?
I got no idea.
Okay, because
That's a little bit beyond my knowledge base.
yeah,
I
yeah.
can definitely ask
Uh,
rioters, but I don't know. I think the plan is to give them a card, but I think it's probably been forgotten. So we probably just need to remind them is all.
yeah, I was just curious about that because you know uh, it feels forgotten to me as well, but also like winnings from something like that, I assume have some amount of contractual obligation, and I was wondering, I don't know, that's just been a question that's been on my mind since Worlds. That was not in the script. That was not actually not one of the questions I wrote down, but
Yeah.
I was inspired to ask it just in case you had any information.
Who did did anyone else get a card? Who was the last Worlds? Who was 2022's Worlds winner?
The one before Talpinator, it
Yeah.
was Aragorn.
And he definitely got a card.
I don't think he got a card. Did he?
No.
No, I think the card was a new reward for the
Oh,
final
right. He was
worlds.
really. Now that I think about it, he was very upset about that. I remember that. I remember seeing about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah.
I think, and I think there were supposed to be two cards, right? Because I think Talpinator was supposed to have a unit, and then like second place was supposed to have a spell or something like that.
Right.
And then for some reason, um, I'm literally blanking on Boulevard. Boulevard was also able to like ban any card from
Oh, that
standard
was
for some
because
reason.
they did that in-person event.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's right.
and he won. There was like 10 prizes, and I think he won and got to pick like the most impactful one or whatever.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was and then he ended up getting a card, which was crazy, by the way.
Boulevard did.
Yeah.
What card did he get?
He got the Cursed Caster card,
Wait, that's
right?
his card? I just
Yeah,
thought
I'm
he
pretty
loved
sure
that
it was
card.
his card. Like it was made with him in mind.
Oh snap! Wait, I always thought that Boulevard just loved that card. I didn't realize that he was like gifted it or something. Interesting.
Well, I don't know if it's like official, but I thought it was like an open secret kind of thing. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I always assumed it was, but maybe I'm wrong.
If Boulevard is watching this video, I don't know why he would be, but if he is, I would love confirmation on that.
He's definitely not.
What do you? You don't know, Red. I mean, these videos have been popping off. I think the last one got like 17 views. So
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like when he was active in the community, it was hard to get him to watch stuff. So and nowadays, man, that's a tall order, but maybe. I mean, he did just cast for
for Prism,
Prism, yeah. So I don't know.
yeah. Okay.
Laura's like that. It's like that ex lover that's the one that got away for a lot of people. So like they try to distance themselves from Laura, but they always keep coming back. Um, because it was just like the best game ever, and then they killed it. So
Yeah. It's it's a sad story. I've actually done a lot of sort of thinking about LOR's role because I think a lot of people see it as completely dead. I mean, we joke about it, and when I say completely dead, I mean competitive specifically because I mean Snooey is still racking up tons of views on his Path of Champions content, so I assume it can't be fully dead. Um, but I think I realize I think something that contributed to LOR's death after like reflection of the last year or so is actually how hard it was pushed in the beginning. Because thinking about it, like LOR esports and competitive LOR didn't really develop naturally, right? It was sort of like Riot was like, "Yep, we're gonna just start running $10,000 opens," right? Um, and while I think that did definitely boost the numbers on the game and improved it, it was artificial. And I think that I wonder how much healthier the scene would be now if they never had competitive tournaments ran by Riot at all and everything had to be done by grassroots and what the modern LOR world would look like if that were the case. And I sort of feel like it would be much more alive than it is in its current state. Granted, we probably wouldn't have had worlds, so I don't know if that's actually a good argument. Or I'm not even making an argument. It's just been something I've been pondering. Um,
well, the conversation about like what Laura did wrong has been like beaten to death, right? And
yeah,
I think everybody understands that like they screwed up the launch, right? For sure.
yeah,
They launched it at a really bad time, and then they never ever re-advertised the game. And then I remember them putting out an article about how they do advertise the game, but they advertise it to basically like the people who already play the game, which was very confusing. I didn't understand the logic in that article. And then um, they did the button, and they said the button was very successful, and then they never rolled it out until after competitive was dead.
yeah,
And then I mean, I think realistically, when you talk about competitive, it was only alive with Riot's support last year at least.
right,
Um, so, and I mean that's evident because now that it's gone, all the players are gone, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, and then you couple it with like some pretty good card games that got released in the last couple years, and it's like it's pretty easy to just move off from a game that you feel. And I think everybody felt it as a player that like the developers, not the developers per se, but the people at Riot that make the decisions just don't care to see the competitive side thrive, right? And so
yeah,
it was easy to just say like, they're not giving me the effort that I want, so why would I give it back to them, kind of thing.
yeah. I guess that brings me to one of the questions I was gonna write down. I was planning on getting to this later, but we sort of naturally gotten here already, which is I'm sort of curious what your take is on the future of Legends of Runeterra Aegis League. In that, is it something that you want to do long term? Because obviously the current iteration of Aegis League has like a long term infrastructure in mind, right? The whole idea of a Champions League and an Aegis League is sort of, uh, you know, it it's reliant on people coming back and sticking around, right? And I was
Right.
wondering, um, do you is that something that obviously I would assume that you like want it to continue, but I'm wondering if like do you expect Aegis League to last for a long time, or I don't know, how do you feel about the long term of Aegis League LOR compared to Legends of Runeterra in its current state?
I'm not optimistic.
Okay.
Especially after last season, like the qualification for this season, where we just kind of like didn't get enough teams to
Yeah.
field like two whole leagues. Um, it's there's some conversations within Aegis about like the future of the company in general.
Oof.
Um, but like in like a positive way,
Oh,
right?
okay,
It's
okay, okay.
maybe like a departure from what we currently do, but something more passion, something that's still related to esports that we're more passionate about.
Right, okay, I
But
understand.
um, and then when you have to make the decisions on like, is it worth the effort that we put into certain games? We've always been on the board of like, if the player base is there, we'll provide it for them, and we've always done that with Riot's games. But sometimes Riot makes it a little difficult to do those kinds of things,
Yeah.
and when it we'll keep doing it if the players are there, but when the players run out, you know it's also a lot of work, right? Like
Right.
the league can be a lot of work, and it's like if we're only doing it for 32 people, is it worth it? Is it worth Hirsch's time? Hirsch has a job, and so those are things we have to evaluate. But um if the players are there, we'll keep doing it, I would say. If we get more than 32 players every season, I don't see why we wouldn't do it.
Does it inspire some confidence that there's at least teams that are in the Ascension League and maybe not Champions League, but at least the Ascension League where like they were never in Aegis before. Right? They're I don't know if they're new players like they might have been playing for the last 4 years, but new at least to the Aegis League.
It does inspire confidence. I think if we were gonna like see, the problem with the league is it it's good in the sense that it's different, but it's almost too different without a supported riot scene, right? So like when it just existed very healthily alongside the competitive scene, um, because it was like you had your solo chance to shine, and then you had your team chance to shine, right?
Yeah.
But if Aegis League becomes like the only thing in competitive, and the game isn't really like made for team play, right?
Right.
Um, it seems a little counterintuitive, and I think players might be a little bit less likely to jump on board with continuing like from season to season. And at that time, like it might just like be a readjustment of like what we're thinking and how we want to do those things. Um, and then maybe we transition into something that's a little bit more like the old system that Riot had, and just host it through Aegis with entry fees if there's interest in that. But um, I love the league, but sometimes you gotta be a little realistic about its future, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, we'll keep doing it as long as the players are there. But I have a feeling the players might not be there for too much longer. That's the sad thing.
Yeah. I This was something that I was debating because so there's been a couple things I've been thinking about, and I think that it would be easy to say I'm coping. I would say that I don't necessarily have an optimistic view of LOR's future and maybe even competitive in general, other than, I intend to play in the leagues when I can just because I still have fun, right? I still think it's fun, so why not? And also, when you're uh, when you're making money off it, it's pretty good. If you can
Yeah,
win, Aegis League is even more fun. Uh,
yeah.
but
I think one of the things that was like really appealing about Aegis is that like the prize pool used to be quite large, and it would be a multi-week process, but the time that players would put in would be worth it for
Yeah.
if they were good, right? Um, I worry about that nowadays. I know
Yeah.
we've got a lot of people who are just kind of diehard, um, and I do worry that if the uh, the Azirs Ascended just kind of win every season, there'll be less and less people show up. But we'll see.
Yeah. I've also I will not lie. I've actually also had that concern as well. I was like, maybe I don't want to win if it means that it
No, no,
discourages
no.
people.
You should always give it your all, for
Yeah.
sure. But
Um, it,
yeah,
the other thing is like I'm not confident I should win because I do like talking trash with stolen conch, but I'm not sure like the effort I'm putting in this season and my team is putting in. I mean, we're definitely putting in effort, right? Like we're practicing and discussing and stuff, but I'm not sure that it's any more than in any other previous Aegis season, right? And in previous Aegis seasons, like teams that I were on were pretty bad. I don't think like I don't know. I don't think that we were bad per se, or I was a bad player, or teams I were on was bad players. But like prior to this Aegis season, I made it to playoffs and then lost in the first round, and that's the best I've done, right? And
right.
it does make me question what the state of the game is if I feel like I'm not putting in that much more effort and I can win a tournament that I think used to not happen. um,
Right.
that is something I'm thinking about. But I will say there's a couple of things that I have because I think I was sort of on LOR was dead train actually like 6 months ago, right? And I was like, I would come back to play an Aegis League because again, it's just something that I have fun with and it's worth it to me, right? Like an entry fee, if I just view it as I pay an entry fee to like play LOR with a team, that's a fun enough experience for me that I would be willing to pay that fee regardless of if I won or not, right? So to me, it's a no-brainer as long as I can, as long as my teammates also want to play. Um, but I also didn't have a lot of confidence in LOR's future. But there's a couple of things that I've been thinking about that have been interesting, which is one, like last week, I was playing against someone on ladder, and they added me as a friend and messaged me afterward and was like, "Holy moly! I didn't think I was good enough to play against you. I've been like copying all of your decks," and I was like, "What?" Like this is the kind of message that I feel like people would send maybe a year, like 2 years ago, right, to someone who streamed. But it was crazy to me that someone knew how I was, even if it was just like looking on ladder or Runeterra AR, and then was excited enough about the game to message me and say like, "Hey, I've been playing a lot and I can't believe I played against you." Like that was, I feel like to me that was clear that like obviously this person was new to LOR, right? And was like sort of going on the process, and that was a bit of a whiplash for me because it was just something that I wouldn't have expected to have happen anymore, and it got me rethinking because then I was also like, well, maybe I'm misunderstanding how dead LOR is, and I looked and like Snooey is still racking up tons of videos on his LOR content. Now, obviously, he does Path of Champions, but like there is going to be a Path of Champions to people who want to play more than Path of Champions pipeline, right? Like I do think like even if most of the new players are doing Path of Champions, that will still generate more interest in competitive if that's actually growing. And that was one thing that I thought was just an interesting incident. And then the other thing I was thinking about was the other esport that I follow closely. Like I'm not really an esports guy, but there is one esport that I like to watch, which is StarCraft Brood War, because I played that game as a kid and I don't know, I like it. And that's a game that has, also zero competitive support from the company, but is doing quite well competitively for a dead game. I mean, they're not running $1 million prizes and nobody can make a living off of any of the prizes, but like like twice a year there's now also these tournaments are only in Korea as well, right? The StarCraft scene outside of Korea is essentially non-existent, but it is a scene now, and it's also hard because it's also like the original esport, some people say. So it might not be a good comparison, but I don't know. I was just sitting there thinking like I was of the opinion LOR was pretty dead too, but those two things made me wonder if LOR wasn't dead. It's just having to regrow, right? Like if you think about it like a forest, Riot killing competitive was like a forest fire, but that doesn't mean that there still can't be trees in the forest. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know. Those are just things that I was thinking about, and I was wondering if you had a perspective of. I was just wondering what your thoughts on that were.
Well, my ADHD brain really latched onto when you said the space. So I'm going to address your question, but then you said like my ADHD brain really latched onto when you said StarCraft 2 was the original esport, and I was just like,
StarCraft
what?
Brood War.
Oh, StarCraft Brood War. And I just thought that was an insane statement. Um, because like that's just objectively not true. Only people who say that are like Blizzard people. So,
That is
but
fair.
um, yeah, I do think Riot's games are different. Um, I think Riot's built a community where the players really rely on Riot for esports direction. Um, and so kind of like grassroots scenes they have never really been strong in Riot's games. That's all. That's how it's always been. There's typically it's someone who's involved in like every single Riot game except for Valorant. And Valorant's even more of a mess when it comes to like grassroots scenes. Um, it's just it's hard to build that community because Riot kind of is the leader of that, and everyone follows Riot's direction. And then Riot doesn't make it very obvious when there are grassroots options for lower tier players, right? Um, for League of Legends, we're probably like the biggest amateur esports League of Legends team, like TL ever. Um, and I'm not just like saying that to brag, but the reality is that that took a lot of time. It took a lot of community building. We've been doing it for like 10 years and we're still not even like that big. Um, so I think and I think LOR has a lot of player base that overlaps with League of Legends and TFT. So I do think if you want like a sustainable esports scene, Riot does need to kind of lead it, just because the community kind of demands it to be that way. Um, did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it did. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think would be an interesting question is like what's the number that would bring people back, right? If I went to Riot and was like, hey, let's do Runeterra opens once a month.
Oof,
What's the number that brings people back? And it's like, is $1,000 a month enough? Hmm, I
man.
don't know. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
it could pique interest, but any number would pique interest really. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
It do,
It's
See, that's another thing. Is like I feel like it would be so ambitious to even say once a month. Because I will say the other thing I noticed about something like StarCraft, which is the one that I follow, but I'm sure that this pattern probably holds in other grassroots-led scenes, is that the frequency of big tournaments is far less than what Riot was putting on, right? Like even before opens became monthly, they were still happening like 4 to 5 times a year, right? Like the original ones with only 32 players and stuff like that,
mhm.
right? Like once a season, and there was usually I don't know 3 to 4 seasons, and I feel like in a lot of the grassroots scenes that I'm seeing, because I guess there is another competitive scene that I'm following, which is for the card game Netrunner, but I take that a little bit less seriously because it's a very small community. Um, but in those two scenes, it's like the number of big tournaments, the number of open level tournaments is once a year or twice a year
Mhm.
maximum, right? Um, so yeah, I don't know. Once a month seems so ambitious. Like I'm sure that a number could get people back, but the thing is, like, I feel like that's also part of what would makes the grassroots scene not work well, right? Because if a grassroots scene can't support once a month unless the game is probably like insanely popular, right? Realistically, I assume a grassroots scene, it seems like they can support twice a year things. And so if Riot is hosting something once a month, like, why would anybody ever join a grassroots tournament unless it was for, I mean, like,
Right.
obviously I think it would help Aegis, right? Like if Riot did something once a month for like $1,000, let's pretend it brought people back, like that would probably help Aegis tournaments, but like it would completely kill the stuff that like Prism is trying to run, and like the Aphrodite Esports, right? Um, at least I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think like nobody would ever do a Prism tournament if Riot's going to host something with a bigger number once a month, right?
Well,
Uh,
yeah, I mean, but that's how it was before.
yeah, true, but like that was sort of my point earlier when I was saying that the competitive scene. I use the word artificial. I don't think I should have said artificial, but I think like that kind of thing happening makes a grassroots scene unsustainable. And I guess I'm wondering.
I don't agree. I just don't agree fundamentally. I get what you're saying, kind of, but I also don't agree.
Yeah,
Um, I get like it would definitely take away the fun tournaments for sure. But if you're talking about bringing the competitive scene back,
yeah,
then I mean, some things kind of go out to pasture, right? But uh, not that I want those tournaments to go away or anything. I just think they adjust to the market. That's just how it would work.
yeah,
How
yeah,
it
yeah,
was, and I think the scene was fine before, with the monthly tournaments, and there was a lot of people who would like go out of their way to like run a tournament that was a practice for the Riot tournament. And I think what really could have made a difference is if the Riot tournaments had entry fees.
yeah,
To be honest, uh, I think I think that would have actually helped the grassroots scene quite a bit, in the
yeah,
sense that like if Riot was like, hey, it's $25 playing this monthly tournament, and the prize pool's like a bunch of dollars, right? Um, and then like when it comes to like, oh, here's a practice tournament, either no entry fee or like a $5 entry fee, people are like, okay, there's a good way, a very low stakes way for me to like invest a small amount of money and see if I actually can hang with the people who are going to put $25 on the line, next week or something like that, right?
yeah,
I think I think that works because like that's just how other card games work. You go
yeah,
to your local card game shop and it's like you pay $30. I mean, and the reason I use $5 is because let's be honest, LOR players are pretty stingy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but you go to like a Pokemon tournament, it's like $30 to walk into your local game store and play, right? And then
yeah,
like sometimes there's not even like a cash prize. You just get like a card pack or something if you win, or a box or something if you win. And then like when you get to like the big tournaments, it's like, okay, all right, I gotta travel here, I gotta buy a ticket, and then I'm stuck here for the next like 2 or 3 days. And so those costs really add up. And I think the advantage of having an online game, right, could have been like, hey, uh, we're still asking you for money, but like it's a lot lower than it would be to go play a Fab tournament or a Pokemon tournament, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Um, so I think I do think. and it's the thing that people have been saying for a while is that if Riot just charged people money, the game would be in a better state. It would just be in a lot better state. It would be kicking right now,
Yeah.
but it's not. So what can you really do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It is funny that LOR definitely like LOR players and LOR like LOR players because of the way LOR trade money, I think definitely cultivated a culture
yes,
of yeah, of not
yes,
paying money.
yeah,
Um, and I find that interesting because it I actually agree with everything you said in terms of money, but I have a paradoxical relationship with that because if opens and those kinds of tournaments ever started with an entry fee, right? I don't think I ever would have become a competitive player just because now that might affect like, maybe I'm not a real competitive player. I think there's a lot of arguments to be said about that, right? I don't really compete in anything else except LOR. And the reason, like nowadays, I would be fine paying an entry fee, right? Like nowadays, I understand how much fun I have and how much effort I need to put in to actually make it, quote unquote, so to speak. Um, and so for me, modern me is like, hell yeah, I would be super down to spend an entry fee, right, to do those. Why didn't Riot do that from the beginning? But I also look back and I realize, like, 4 years ago, the reason I started playing competitively was because it was free. Like they definitely sold this idea that no matter who you were, if you were good, you could prove it, right? And I think that was really attractive to me as someone who didn't have a job and was going to college during COVID, right? I didn't,
sure.
and
Counter,
yeah,
counter. Maybe you wouldn't have been a player, but maybe there would still be more players.
yeah, and I agree. I mean, I
Like,
I agree. I
and,
don't think it was bad of them. It's just I guess what I'm saying is I feel like a hypocrite.
I think what it could have been is like you could say like, well, I wouldn't have been a player, and it's like, okay, well, they could have made free tournaments as well, right? With a
Yeah.
much lower prize pool, right? Because let's be honest,
Yeah.
we know that there was a lot of people playing in those opens, right? And let's say a tenth of them actually paid like the $25 entry fee, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the prize pool was like 10 grand. They got enough money that for left over from that to run free tournaments with a smaller prize pool, right?
Yeah.
Um, they would have they. I mean, it's not like they would be making tons of money, but they'd be making like my estimates close to like $15,000 a tournament, right? Of quote unquote profit. Even if that was like only a tenth of people showing up from the opens to play in the like a paid entry one. And then I think like when you start to say like, "Here, here's $10,000 a month," you're just going to attract more and more people, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then if there was like once every 2 months there was a $1,000 tournament, it's free entry. I think people would have resonated with that. But I'm not the head of esports planning for Legends of Runeterra. I don't think they really even had one because I don't think they really considered it an esports game for a long time. And then they're like, we're making the commitment to PvP,
Yeah.
and I still don't think they really had the infrastructure for it. They had a lot of developers that were just balancing cards. Um, and there was people who came up with systems, but I think, like you said, they kind of trapped themselves from the get go when they made the game so accessible.
Yeah.
Um, but I think sometimes you just kind of pull the band-aid off. It probably would have been better if they did it 2 or 3 years ago and was just like, pull the band-aid off. We're charging people now. Um, and I think the game would be alive. But you know, I think this is a topic that's been beaten to death.
Yeah. Yeah. I
you
guess
know?
what I'm more interested in nowadays is, I guess I'm trying to gauge the demand for it to be alive. Like obviously I'm playing in Aegis, but you know if next season never came around, I wouldn't be like obviously I would join if there was one, but I'm not self aware. I'm not self aware, and I'm not trying to cope. And I would say like I'm not. I think even if LOR came back in its competitive prime, I'm not sure that I'm even in the life situation to actually make it work anymore these days. Anyway, um, but I guess my main question is my main curiosity is how much demand is there really now? And obviously, I think like the fact that Aegis League didn't get enough people to fill to the Ascension League and the Champions League suggests that it's the demand isn't really there. I wonder how much how much truth there is in that because I think there are new players who right like the truth of the matter is that like people who are joining probably don't know what the hell Aegis League is and have never heard anything about it, right? And I think that's the real problem is that any demand that exists, there's no way to connect the demand to the supply, right? And I suppose that that would really fall on Riot. But I do think that's part of why I'm trying to make these videos as well, because I recognize, like, look, if LOR is dead, then LOR is dead, and these videos are a fun little project. But if LOR isn't dead, the only way to prove that it's not dead or that there is any kind of demand is to somehow connect the people who want to play to the people who are giving tournaments. And I just don't know. I don't really know how to do that. I don't actually think these videos are necessarily going to help a lot, right? I expect every single viewer that watches me is either going to be someone that I know personally who's watching it because they're like my friend or family, or is watching it because they're in the Aegis League itself, right? Um, but yeah, I do think we're in a situation where like if demand for Runeterra competitive exists, I don't know how anyone could even tell. um,
I think it would be like we would need Sunny.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like videos on Aegis to kind of bring it back, to be honest.
yeah,
But I don't see that, and it's not because I don't think Sunny is like a bad guy. It's not his interest. He's got other stuff he wants to do. So,
Have you ever
but
invited him to an Aegis League? What if you sent a personal invite?
he's played in Aegis before.
What?
Yeah, he played in the EU Aegis. I don't think he played much, but he did. Um, in fact, I think like Luna has like drama with him from playing him in Aegis. Um, so yeah, it was a long time ago, but he has played in Aegis before.
Hmm.
But I don't see him coming back. We have a good relationship with him though, like a really good relationship. We invited him to do the voiceover for the Worlds format video, and he had a blast with it, and it was very easy to work with him. But um, yeah, I don't see why he would care about coming back to competitive.
Yeah.
And, okay, what are your other questions?
Okay, we can get into the original question I was going to start off asking, which is probably a bit
Yeah.
more of a cheery and not dead horse subject. Um, okay, I want to talk about the Aegis League structure of specifically the relegation tournament, where
Yes.
the top two in the Ascension League. This is the way that I phrased it. The top two in the Ascension League and the relegation tournament, they get 2 lives. They need to win one game to make it to the next Champion League. Your next tier of player is the people who lost in week one of the Champion League playoffs and also seeds
Mhm.
3 and 4 from Ascension League, who also get
Mhm.
2 lives, but they have to win 2 games to make it.
Mhm.
And then the bottom two teams of the ACL, they have 1 life. If they lose one game, they're out, and they need to win two games to make it.
Right, right.
Um, I actually really like this system, um, but I was wondering there there is an argument. I think that there's a argument to be made that it feels awkward. Namely, that it feels. I can see worlds where it feels strange that people in the Ascension League, especially the third and fourth league from the Ascension League, have a better shot from than people in the Champions League. And I do understand that it's the point of it is to churn new teams in the Champions League, which makes it more interesting. And I agree. I actually think that that does make it more interesting. But I can also see, like, currently Group Two in the Ascension in the Champions League is incredibly tight. Like, almost everybody in Group Two has an equal score. Um, and the one team that doesn't have an equal score is one game off of being tied, right? Um, and I can see it being really, really frustrating to be like last place in Group Two, where you're like maybe 1 to 2 games off, and you go to the relegation tournament, and you're just boned because the odds are not stacked in your favor. Now, maybe you're not boned because, again, like there's the obvious argument. Well, if you're good enough to be in the Champions League, then it shouldn't be hard to win those 2 games, right? Um, but I like there is still truth to the matter that equally skilled players in this tournament, right? The people who are in the Ascension League will do better than, let's say, someone from Group Two who's really tight, even if maybe they're equivalent in skill. And I want to get your thoughts on. Do you have a rebuttal to that? And if not, it's fine. Like I completely agree that churning new players in the Ascension League takes priority over that frustration case. But I can see worlds where that. I'm sure that was something you were considering you were making it. I just want to know what your
Yeah, we
thoughts were.
don't make formats based on like fringe cases, right? Um,
French cases?
there's always yeah, like fringe cases,
Oh,
like
French. Oh,
things
yeah.
there's always been you can always do that with any format, right? You can always say, well, like, well, these four teams tied at 8-8, and you're telling me that their head-to-head record is what determines who should make playoffs. There's always something that can be wrong in a system, right?
Right.
But the logic is that um, the seeds 3 and 4 from AAL, remember, they're originally the second seed in each of their groups,
Right.
right?
Right.
And they don't play a playoffs. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's yeah.
so they would go straight into a kind of like even set going into um the relegation tournament, right? And the teams that are the top two seeds from AAL, they would essentially be the first seeds in each of their group. And to be blunt, we're kind of separating winners and losers here, right? Teams that have shown consistent success throughout the year or at the season, the AAL teams that finish top two, they get an extra benefit, right? Teams that show that they're kind of middle of the pack, on that verge of being great, right? They're not losing a lot. They're not last in their group, but they're also not first in their group. They kind of get put in like a kind of like a 0-0 record, like you said. And then the teams that have struggled in their groups, they go in at a disadvantage. Um, and I don't think I think if we're trying to field the top 8 best teams, right, we need to make sure that the bottom teams have an incentive to actually come in and perform. Um, because if you finish last in your group, then you know that you're at that disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
What right now, group two is close, right?
Right.
Will it be close by the end of the season?
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, last season in ACL, the two teams in the bottom of each group were quite quite far in the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it I we want to reward success, and I think a team that's consistently shown that they've won all season or are definitely winning more than they're losing shouldn't be put on the same pedestal as a team that's losing more than they're winning, even if they're necessarily fighting harder competition. If they are fighting harder competition and they are struggling, but they're a good team, then they should be able to navigate the relegation tournament, even if it's like a one life kind of situation. Because and the strength of this is that this playoff format, right? It's not collab sets, it's not solo sets, it's you really get to utilize the whole strength of your team. So if your team is good at an individual level and at a preparation level, then you should be able to get through the playoff system in the relegation tournament. Um, if your competition actually is inferior.
Yeah, yeah. I do really like this format because uh, I think like in seasons past, even before the Champions League split, there wasn't really like the worst thing about being last in a group was that you spent money on an entry fee and you don't make it, right? And I actually do really like that being last in a group feels bad, right? Like I already know that when I'm gonna make the video covering who's last, I'm gonna be like, oh man, I that we'll see if they can make it, but that just hats out, like heart out to them or whatever, you know. um,
Yeah, because
I
they get nothing. They get nothing.
yeah, yeah,
Even if you're an ascension team and you finish top two and you go 0-2 in relegation, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
You're still getting money. I mean, it matters, but you still get money.
yeah,
If you finish last in your group, not only do you have to go through the relegation tournament to pay the ACL entry fee next time if you get through it, but you don't get anything from it. You don't get a reward. So it is harsh, but it should motivate teams that want to play next season to, you know, put more effort in.
yeah,
Um, we don't want any situations where it's like counter logic gaming, right? In League of Legends or like a fly quest in League of Legends of the old days, where they're just teams that just lose all the time, and we just expect them to show up next season and lose all the time again. We don't want that. That's not the purpose of this.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it
I
might
will
end up
say,
being that way because it might just be like the 8 teams that actually sign up. They're the same teams every season, but ideally, it's not going to be that way. So
yeah. I do hope that Aegis gets to. I do hope that there's enough interest in Aegis to continue it because I do think that this is probably the most exciting format that I've seen in a competitive league. Like I would love to, even if it's like old LOR and I suck, right? Like I think like old LOR, old Aegis League, like I'm probably an Ascension team, Ascension level team, maybe bottom four, and I feel like I would still love the drama, and so I do hope it continues because I do think that this is probably one of the best like long term storytelling things to exist, and I think like I've been excited to sort of follow the history of players and teams in this league. Whereas like sometimes I even forget who's won past Aegis season. Right? Like, I didn't even know Snooey played in an EU Aegis season, right? And I think
yeah,
that like
we only had 2 EU seasons, and people did not care for them, which is why we stopped doing them, right? So
yeah, but I think that like I really like this format too because I think in previous seasons, once your team is out of the league, right? Like once like you've gotten bottom of your group or once you've lost in the playoffs, like there's just no motivation to watch or care or engage with the content at all. Whereas I feel like because of this like Champions League retention system, um, even if I'm even if I'm someone who lost out in playoffs, but I'm still going to be in the Champions League next season, like I do care to watch the finals and the relegation tournament because I want to know who my opponents are going to look like in the next season. Um,
Yeah.
so I think yeah, I'm sad that this format came out at a time where Legend of Terra might be on its deathbed, because I do think this format for a tournament is on the money with like how a successful esport structure for a card game should be, right? Because I think, like, if you take fighting games or League of Legends, I think like there's some amount of joy to watch people just be really good, right? Like half of the reason you watch League of Legends tournaments isn't necessarily because, like, a lot of it is like gaining the satisfaction from watching really good play. And there's some of that in Legends of Runeterra, but I think we'd all be kidding ourselves if we didn't say that Legends of Runeterra was a much harder game to spectate than something like League of Legends or a fighting game, right? It doesn't have the same, like, there will be satisfying moments when you're spectating, but it's not going to have that same kind of draw to it. And I think that this system is probably the best system I've seen for sort of counteracting the lack of spectator interest into like a macro level. Like, maybe I don't have to, maybe I, maybe it's harder to spectate a Twitch stream of the tournament going on than it would be like a Twitch stream of a League of Legends tournament going on. But I do care to follow up with like the the scores and the players and the swap outs and stuff like that, right? I feel like it's definitely set itself to be like almost like to feed like a sports gambling mindset.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, I don't think it's popular enough to ever enter that realm. But if a format like this was as popular as like the NFL, right? Like, this would be the type of stuff that people would like, be making bets on and stuff like that. And I just think that's a I mean, I don't condone gambling necessarily, but I think that there is fun in that kind of way of viewing a game that makes it fun outside of the game itself as well.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I know there's like a time when, so I mean, the format kind of is birthed by the fact that the game is unpopular, right? I mean, in the past we had formats that accommodated a lot of teams. Um, and this is a format that's specialized at a lot smaller amount of teams. Um, I think it's so like it's just kind of the natural evolution of how the game would go as as more and more players leave. Um, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I know there was a time when we had like, oh, like 40 teams, and there were people who were like, well, we should just do like fantasy ages, you know,
yeah.
uh, which would be funny. I mean, it would be a nightmare when the player that you drafted the first round just doesn't play that week.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's be some way to like work around it. But um, yeah, I mean, maybe we should have implemented gambling, and then like more people would have stayed around.
Yeah. That's the real way to really revive it. Is you start, you have the Aegis League, which, like, who even cares? You start opening like a sports betting situation. You get Aegis League and DraftKings or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh,
I know what will revive Aegis League. You guys need a cryptocurrency. You need Aegis coin.
um,
This joke
so
might not make it in the final cut.
we did joke internally about making like Aegis coin. Turns out that's already a thing. Um, that's already a cryptocurrency, Aegis. So it's just not as appealing. But we've had a lot of like offers to do like crypto stuff with our esports, and we've always shot it down.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, maybe you're right. I think that just getting people like needlessly addicted to something that's associated with our league would have been super beneficial, right? Like just gambling or um we send people nicotine patches when they have to get the Aegis match or
Yeah.
something like that. Or something like that would have
The
really worked wonders.
The people who don't win money, they get complimentary nicotine patches sent straight to them.
Exactly. And put a little logo on there, and it would have all been great. That's great.
uh, Alrighty, well, I think we're reaching up on about as much time as I was hoping to talk to you for. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm surprised you didn't have that many questions. We had like three questions, and we just talked about it for a long time.
Yeah, I
Did you
mean,
have no other questions?
what questions were you expecting me to ask?
What's Hirsch's real name? I can dox him.
Yeah, I guess I didn't consider that one. I didn't consider
It's just like you could ask me anything, I would have to give you the answer, and it's just like, gotcha. I guess I once Aegis once bought a computer for a caster, and then like a whole ass computer, like a $1,200 one,
holy shit.
and they stopped casting for us like shortly afterwards,
Did they
and went
start
into
casting for
VTubing.
someone else?
Nope, they just went into VTubing. It was we were like, okay, okay. And
Wow.
then there was like a producer that we worked with, and we brought him to like a pretty big event, flew him out, hotel, feed him. You know, he was someone we worked with a lot. After that event, he stopped working with us. We were like, he didn't stop working with us. He stopped taking the free gigs that we were offering. So like sometimes we'd be in a pinch and we'd be like, hey, we need you to produce. Can you do it for free or can you do it for like cheap? And he used to be like, yeah, 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 yeah. But now every time he's like, no, no, no. And we were just like, but we flew you to like this location and fed you for like a week and paid you like all this money. And so, yeah, I mean, like people switch up, you give them help and then they switch up on you. And that's, yeah, yeah. Day one was like pretty bad of Worlds. I was like in a really negative place after day one broadcast. And then day three was like crazy sick, so we were very happy with how it went.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't remember thinking badly of day one at all. I remember thinking that Worlds was the best thing I've watched LOR content wise. I mean, yeah, it was awesome.
Could you believe that I kind of? Could you believe that that was basically a two-person job?
Um, if it's you
Like
and
all the
Hirsch,
like all no no no, it wasn't me and Hirsch. It was me and head of production and quality assurance.
is that guy's
His
name
name
Ben?
Benjamin's. Yeah yeah yeah.
Yeah.
We worked on that. We worked on Worlds for like 5 months, just us two. All of the graphics, all of the content, all of that, and then like we obviously like hired our interviewer Brankles to interview people and players, and then Boulevard helped with like interviewing devs and stuff like that. But it was basically like a two-person job, and then um, and then when it came time to like production day, it was technically there's 5 people in the production room, and but it was me and Benja doing the whole production, and then Hirsch doing all the spectating. Um, so that's like a peek behind the curtain. And we had one guy on who was monitoring the chat and audio, and then one guy who was running the actual tournament. Uh,
So did
so,
Riot not send you guys anything? Any like help?
well, I mean, that's not how it works.
Damn.
They, they, they. Well, it does for like their internal stuff, like League of Legends. They do it all internally,
Right.
but like for subtitles for TFT, for Valorant, well, not Valorant. Valorant's a bad example. But for TFT and LOR, they would just contract it all out. And then it's like they kind of just pay you, and these are the expectations they have. And then you kind of just figure it out as the company that's contracted to do it. Right.
Wow.
So as the company, you say, like, this is how much money we need. And then, like, this is what we're going to do with the money. After they say, like, this is what we want. And then they say, okay, we agree to that amount because you're spending it on things that we think will meet what we want, and then you kind of just take it all from there.
Dang.
Yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot. Um,
Was Worlds at least lucrative for Aegis or you?
Actually, it was not. It just made zero money, but there was extenuating circumstances that caused that, and then everybody got paid a good amount of money though.
Okay.
So, but for like the Aegis coffers, like $0 went into it.
But you at least get the clout of running Worlds.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. It was good to run an event like that and not lose money. Like that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Not losing money is key. Second thing is being able to pay everybody who worked on it, which is kind of where all the money goes. And then um the third thing is that like it goes on your resume, which is pretty sick, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So have we been able to leverage that very well? Not really, but like it will be in the future. We'll be able to like brag about it and use it to get us more work. But right now, kind of in like a transition period, so taking our time.
Yeah. There was one more question that I actually forgot to ask, which
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
kind of related to this conversation, which is there something that Aegis like I don't know, is there something that players or content creators? I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a content creator, but I suppose like I am making content at this point and trying to stick to that consistently at this point. Is there something that you feel like could be done to help the league out, or is it kind of just we'll just see it run its course?
Um, yes, every single person should stream, tweet, make YouTube videos about the Aegis League. Obviously, that would help,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Uh, what it's like, what do I want to ask players to do? Really nothing, to be honest. I think I'm happy with how it is now. Um, it obviously could it be better? Yeah, sure, but like I'm not gonna be like begging people to make content or asking people to make content for it. I think if they want to do that, then they have my blessing and we can augment that and give them the tools that they need for sure. But like, um, I don't know. Like, obviously, everyone making content would help, but it's not like it's a huge deal. I don't know. Like, I'm not tied to um having people do that kind of stuff. Because the other thing that is that like whenever you guys make content about Aegis, I like go and look at it all. So if everyone's making content, then I can't watch it all. It's not nearly as fun either. But
holy shit.
Conch should go back to making videos, and then Spitz should make videos,
Yeah,
and then you continue making videos,
yeah.
and then we'll be okay.
The video. So I will say like the videos that I want to make, as you probably already noticed, is like I want to. I sort of want to be a record keeper and like a storyteller, right? I sort of want to. I feel weird because obviously I'm playing in it, so it feels like there's a bit of bias. But I guess my hope is that down the line, you know, someone can be like in 2 years or something, there's been 8 of these or whatever, right? Let's just say I'm making up numbers, but let's just say that like there's been 8 in 2 years time, and the next one is coming, and like someone who's new is like, oh, what is the history of this player? And I'd be like, oh, well, they've gotten these placements and they've played this much before, and I feel like that helps create stories. But I do recognize that there's probably a need for just like a hero, right? Like I feel like whenever I would watch like Aikido, right? Like he was like the protagonist, right? He was like the guy everyone was playing vicariously through him, right? And I do think like there's probably room for that kind of content to be made for someone to just root for as you get their POV through the tournament. And then yeah, my main goal was to just help everyone understand Aegis at a macro level, right? Because like I would tell my family about like how I would do in Aegis, and they didn't care, or I mean they're not supposed to care, but it's supposed to, like it's hard to talk about this kind of thing because you're like, oh, I was in group one, group two, oh, we made playoffs, and like they just hear all these words and don't know what it means. I realize like the content that I want to make is sort of allow everybody to be on the same page so they understand what stakes they're playing for and stuff. Because to be honest with you, like I didn't even realize the how the relegation tournament worked until I was like, well, I want to make a video on what the stakes are, and I want everyone to be there, so I should go read the rulebook, right? And I feel like that's probably true for a lot of people, right? There's probably a lot of people who don't even realize yet how bad it is to like lose the ACL, right? So that was sort of the role that I was hoping to fulfill. I do
Well,
hope.
that's because everyone who signs up, they have to check a box at the end of this application period that says, "I've read all the rules and agree to them." So I assume everyone's reading the rule book. Are you saying that's not true?
Well, here's what I will say. I
Uh
don't think
huh.
we filled out an application. I think you guys
Well,
DM. I think Hirsch DM'd us in
that's
a
what
thing. It was
people.
like, "Hey, are you guys playing? And are the same players playing?" And I said yes, and that was.
You know what? Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, maybe the Ascension Leaguers had to read the rule book, but returning Champions League team, I'm not sure that we even had to click a box this season. um, no, I am a adamant rulebook reader. You can tell that I've read the rule book because anytime I've asked you about a rule, you would tell me go read the rule book, and then the only way I would get my answer is by reading the rule book.
That's true. That is true. I do tend to tell people to read the rule book because just sometimes it feels like people don't want. They just want to be handheld the whole time. It's like you're a free human with free will and a brain. If there are answers out there, you should seek them. One of the things that actually baffles me, and not into like getting into millennialism real quick, but like I see this with my like Gen Z brother-in-law, and I see this with my dad, is like they'll just ask questions and then they just accept that they just accept that they don't know the answer. And it's like, but why? You could just Google your very simple question and then find the answer. And it's the same thing with Aegis. I don't know what this rule is. Okay, well the rule books are there. Just click it, control F, type what you're looking for. It's there. Seek the answers yourself is what I'm saying. Do not rely on people to tell you the answer. That's the lessons for life, just in general. You know, don't
Aegis Red
expect
is
somebody to
improving
guide
the lives of
you.
everyone watching right now.
Yeah, you know what? That helps in your job too, people. Don't always ask your boss for answers. Just seek them out yourself, and then they'll think you're so smart. Like it's actually baffling what a little effort will do for like your whole life. That's one of the things I tell people about Aegis is that like what they're like, well, how is it so successful? And it's like because we care. Like
Yeah.
we do. We put in effort and like it's that simple. If you if you want to put on a league, right, and you want to put on an event and you want the production to be good, okay, how are you going to accomplish that? Well, you could just learn production yourself. That's what I did. I learned graphic design, I learned production, I learned all the things that I wanted Aegis to be good at. But back then, Runeterra Academy, all those things I wanted them to be good at, I had to just go out and learn. And and that applies to basically everything. If you want to do it, you gotta just put in the effort to do it just a little bit. A little bit of effort will take you like such a far distance. Um, that's kind of like my motto.
Yeah.
And anytime I see things like where people are slipping up here or there, it's almost always contributed to like laziness. Um, Now, obviously, I'm not going to get into like people's financial situations. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your hobbies, your passions, maybe your job, these kinds of things. A little bit of effort can take you quite a long way.
Are you
I'm
a?
not saying if
Are,
you're homeless, a little effort will get you $1 million. That's not what I'm saying. But you know, the things that you
wow.
are in, a little bit of effort will take you a lot further than just kind of going through life. Because a lot of people just kind of go through life doing whatever.
You said you're an open book, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can I ask how old you are?
I'm 30.
What the hell? Okay. Man, based on that answer, that was like, a 45-year-old thing. My band director when I was in high school, oh so long ago,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a boomer now. Uh,
Yeah.
my band director said something very similar to me, which was, I mean, the way he phrased it, because he wasn't talking about Runeterra, but he said, the more the more amount of resources you put into something, the more you'll get out of it. So the more of your time you put into it, the more of your effort you put into it, the more of, you know, money or connections or whatever, the uh, the more that you'll get out of it. And that doesn't always mean it'll be successful, but yeah, I think it's a very similar sentiment of, you know, if you want something to happen, you gotta you gotta be willing to sacrifice something, right? Your time, your effort,
Yeah.
your
And
money,
I mean,
whatever.
like, you got to be realistic, right? If you're 35 and you want to be an astronaut, you probably missed the boat on that, right? But, but like, I remember I was at a point in my life where I was just like, I want to provide for my wife and my family. And, you know, I could I could go around forever applying for all the jobs in the world, but I was like, F it. I'm going to school, I'm going to learn, get my degree, and I put my nose to the grindstone, got great grades, and was immediately rewarded with a job that I couldn't even imagine getting 4 years ago. Right. So and it's that kind of stuff that's always been my driving motivation. It's just like people I, I I genuinely attribute success for people the amount of work that they put into it, right? It's kind of like the Kobe mentality.
Yeah,
It's also I call it the Tyler One mentality too,
yeah.
because uh, Tyler One is not good at a lot of things, but you know what he'll do is he'll put like
Grind.
7,000 hours into it,
Yeah.
and then like, he'll be the best or one of the best that you've ever seen at it, and that's kind of what I did with Runeterra Academy and Aegis is like I just wanted to run tournaments, and I just put thousands of hours into learning how to make tournaments as best as I could as one person, right? Um, and same thing with work, same thing with school. So
You heard it
that's
here first, folks. Red is a Sigma male. He's on that grind
no, no,
set.
no, no. That's people go, and I want to be boomer about this, but people go through life and they just coast, and it's like that's 98% of the population, 95% of the population. Just be the 5% that puts a little bit more than coasting into it, and just see what you get out of it. You'd be surprised. You would be very surprised.
There's a lot of Aegis League viewers right now who are feeling really guilty about not reading the rulebook.
And that's what this is all about. If you just read the rule book, there would have been no issue. You probably would have gone ages by now if you just read the rule book. But uh, you're just saying, people don't know in section 7, 0.21, it just tells you how to win ages, and
Yeah,
people just don't read the rule book. It's crazy.
that's actually the Azir's Ascended diff. People, they're coming to me, they're asking, like, nobody's asking me this, by the way, but I'm going to say people are asking me, how did you choose what decks to bring? I'm like, dude, did you even rule the rule book? Red said what decks would win right there.
Yeah, right there.
You want to know
Now
what
I'm gonna have
counters
to.
fearsomes? Pale Cascade Precious Pet. Stop that. Red already told you. It's in the rulebook.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Just now I'm gonna have to take it out. So anybody who sees it now will be there. But if you
That's
read it
actually.
before, you know.
Oh, there was one question I want to ask too. Jokes aside, I was curious. What did you get your degree in? If I can be a bit personal here.
Aerospace engineering. But I don't use aerospace engineer. I'm not an aerospace engineer. But I am an engineer. But I don't use any of my aerospace engineering. But the fact is like I got an engineering degree, and that went a long way.
Yeah.
Um, you know, if I were to recommend, if anybody wants to live a life where they're just like, I want to work so I can do fun stuff, which is a philosophy that I have. A lot of people are like, I want to love what I do. I don't love what I do, but it lets me do the stuff that I love. If you want to do something like that, just get a mechanical engineering degree. I know easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
But just get one. Uh, go into like a trade or something, and just
Yeah.
like do the work, and then like you'll make the money that you need to do the stuff that you want to do. That or go live in like Iowa or something where the houses cost like pennies. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, it, it, I know it's easy to be like, just do STEM, but like, honestly, it's kind of a cheat code in today's day and age. Just do STEM
Yeah.
if you want to make money.
That
Um,
that was my strategy too. I knew that I knew that I wanted to make enough money to be able to support myself and support an eventual family that I'll have someday. And I was like, I don't really care what it is as long as it's enough to let me live comfortably, right? And be able to support people that I care about. That's yeah. I got computer science degree, um, and for that reason. Now, computer science actually on the down low in the modern age. I'm lucky enough that I was able to get a job because of
it's
nepotism.
saturated. Like, yeah. Isn't it all saturated in computer science right now?
Yeah, I mean it's super. Yeah, either computer science like has taken a huge hit especially compared to other STEM fields for like if you want to get a job afterward, just because there's so many people taking computer science, and quite frankly, speaking from personal experience, there's a lot of people who are graduating the computer science degrees that I don't think could do things that you would want someone with a computer science degree to do. Like if you're going to hire a
Mhm.
software engineer to make you some kind of software, I think a lot of people with computer science degrees are not equipped for that. And a big problem with that is that a computer science degree is like what they tell you to do for like it is the degree you should get if what you want to do as a profession is code. But like universities that teach computer science do not teach you how to actually make something. It's like entirely theory. There is very little practical application of like how do you make something that someone will use or want to use. But also, I think there's a lot of people who I think computer science, at least at the university I went to, the curriculum was too easy to get past. Like I was probably one of the better performing students. I wasn't the best, but I was probably, I was doing pretty well. And like there was a class where I straight up just didn't do any of the homeworks and still did fine. And I don't. That's not me bragging. That's I think like a criticism of like you're making your computer science classes easy enough that people don't really have to care. Now I was lucky enough that like I I knew what I wanted to learn, and so I've been learning stuff outside of it. And like I got an internship where I learned way more about how to actually make stuff. But yeah, it, I don't think I think there's a lot of problems with the computer science industry right now, which is a bit of a segue. That's actually
Mhm.
a bit of a tangent. All right, I do think we should wrap it up though, so I'll leave this off on one more question, Red, which is, what is the correct card to splash in fearsomes?
Um, Precious Pet.
Precious pet. Okay. All right. Well, you've just secured Conch making a video. So big win.
Like I don't I Conch he's like he went like full stalker status on me, bro. He was like, I want to propose a mid-season rule change. I said no, and then I went outside and had dinner with my wife. I came back and he was full on crashing out. Like I'm like, chill out. He's like, he disrespected me after all I've done for him. I'm like, relax, dude. It's not that serious.
uh, I do.
Also, I don't change rules in the middle of the season. So, like, even if it's a meme, I don't want to hear it.
Did he ever
So,
DM you the rule change?
no.
Wow, he's actually kept it to himself. I do think.
To be honest, it's probably stupid.
I mean, I will say I think that if Conch was a regular content creator, he would do numbers. I think he's got a great content factory going on right now. I think if
Yeah,
he just streamed his takes instead of typing them in the Aegis general chat, he could be doing numbers.
for sure. He's on the level of delusion that people like can definitely get on. So, like,
Alrighty. Well, thank you for the chat, Red. It was good. It was good
yeah,
being
no.
here.
Thank you for chatting with me. You know,
Um,
have fun.
yeah, if you ever want to chat again, let me know. I will say the reason that I didn't have questions is I didn't consider personal questions. I was definitely going into this interviewing like Aegis League head of Esports Red, and I realize, especially like the conversation about degrees, that it's probably I probably could have actually asked more personal information without worrying about it. It didn't occur to me. Uh,
Yeah, I
so I
mean,
know.
there's a line, right? You can't just like ask for my address. But, but yeah,
uh,
I get it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So if you ever want to chat again, let me know. I'd be down. It was it was cool to talk about it. Um, yeah, I'm gonna end recording right now. Boom.